Okay, everyone, I'm going to do a talk on once I get started. I'm going to do a talk on George William Russell and Theosophy in Ireland. It's someone who interests me a lot. So, right, we've got organised finally. So, George William Russell was born on the 10th of April, 1867, in Lurgan, County Armagh, Ireland. He later adopted the name A.E., which is derived from the word aeon, which refers to eternity or very long periods of time in some traditions and cultures. He grew up in Dublin and studied at the Metropolitan School of Art. He trained as a painter, but also wrote poetry, novels, short stories, and spiritual works. His poetry and paintings often deal with Irish mythology and mystical visions. One of his poems, titled Answer, expresses the soul's longing for release from its prison of flesh. It goes something like this. The warmth of life is quenched with bitter frost. Upon the lonely road a child limps by, skirting the frozen pools, our way is lost. Our hearts sink utterly. But from the snow-patched moorland, chill and drear, lifting our eyes beyond the spired height, with white fire lips apart the dawn breathes clear, its soundless hymn of light. Out of the vast, what voice of one replies, whose words are clouds and stars and night and day, when for the light the anguished spirit cries, deep in its house of clay. He was also an artist. One of his paintings, they were very unique and mystical paintings that he did. It's well worth looking online to find some more of his work. It's really very beautiful, very inspiring, and very, as I said, very unique, very unusual. Russell was also involved in Irish politics and edited the Irish Homestead Journal for the Irish Agricultural Association. He was active in the Celtic revival in Ireland, along with W.B. Yeats. There's Yeats. Yeats, of course, was probably more famous than Russell. He was very involved in the Hermetic movement and the Golden Dawn. Also spent a little time in the Theosophical Society, going to theosophical meetings. And of course, he was a great poet, dramatist, etc. But probably he's become more famous, I think, a lot more famous than Russell became. Even though he says about Russell, he was the one poet of modern Ireland who has moulded a spiritual ecstasy into verse, the most delicate and subtle poetry that any Irishman of our time has written, which is a great compliment by Yeats. He was instrumental also, Russell was also instrumental in the founding of what became the Abbey Theatre in Dublin with Yeats and Lady Gregory. His play Deirdre, based on an Irish legend, was performed there in 1902. To add yet another string to his bow, he also designed the costumes for the first production. He was very talented. There's Lady Gregory. She was very prominent in the Irish theatre around that time. So Russell joined the Theosophical Society in 1887 and was a pupil of H.P. Blavatsky when she was at Dublin in 1887. In 1898, he married Violet North, who was a fellow Theosophist. With Charles Johnston, his brother Lewis Johnston, William Butler Yeats, H.M. Magee, and others, Russell established the first Dublin Lodge of the Theosophical Society in April 1886. He became friends with several American Theosophists, such as William Quan Judge, who was one of the founders of the Theosophical Society in New York in 1875. Also James Morgan Price and Henry A. Wallace. Of course, that's William Quan Judge. He would meet in Dublin with Charles Johnston, W.B. Yeats, and others to read excerpts from the Vedas and the Upanishads. That's Charles Johnston. He was very much liked his translations. They were very poetic. He had a nice, clear way of expressing himself. I have his translation of the Crest Jewel of Wisdom by Sri Shankaracharya, which is a beautiful translation. They weren't kind of very intellectual translations like some of the early Orientalists. They were very poetic. Obviously, he had some spiritual feel for what he was translating. Another acquaintance was James Joyce, who also had an interest in theosophy at the time. Russell published much of Joyce's early works and helped to further his career as a writer. It's interesting. P.L. Travers, the author of Mary Poppins, was another author helped by Russell. She came from the USA to England in 1924, and her interest in mythology and folklore brought her into contact with Russell and Yeats. There she is I think it's in the Midsummer Night's Dream by Shakespeare. She's playing Titania. Obviously, she was also an actress. The Irish writer George A. Birmingham stated about Russell, he is a man of extraordinary prodigality of mind. That's a word I'm not familiar with. Ideas, the hoarded gold of others, are scattered by him with amazing profusion. There's probably no writer today who does not owe something to Mr. Russell. That's really interesting to know what an influence he did have on other writers. He was so humble, probably, that he never took credit. According to Ernest Augustus Boyd, one of the earliest historians of Irish revivalism, as vital a factor in the evolution of Anglo-Irish literature as the publication of Standish O'Grady's History of Ireland, the two events being complementary to any complete understanding of the literature of the revival, the Theosophical movement provided a literary, artistic, and intellectual centre from which radiated influences whose effect was felt even by those that did not belong to it. An amazing comment. So it is interesting to discover the contribution of Theosophy to Irish culture at the time, led mainly by George William Russell and probably, of course, Yeats. Russell wrote many articles for the Irish Theosophist magazine, and in a letter to the Irish writer Sean O'Fowlin, if that's how you pronounce it, he stated, "You dismiss H.P. Blavatsky rather too easily as hocus pocus. Nobody ever affected the thought of so many able men and women by hocus pocus. The real source of our influence is to be found in The Secret Doctrine, a book on the religions of the world, suggesting or disclosing an underlying unity between all religions. It was a book which Maeterlinck said contained the most grandiose cosmogony in the world, and if you read it merely as a romantic compilation, it is one of the most exciting and stimulating books written for the last 100 years. It is paying a poor compliment to men like Yeats, Maeterlinck, and others, to men like Sir William Crookes, the great chemist of modern times, who was a member of her society, to Carter Blake, FRS, the anthropologist, and the scholars and scientists in many countries who read H.P. Blavatsky's books, to assume that they were attracted by hocus pocus. If you are ever in the National Library, Kildare Street, and have a couple of hours to spare, you might dip into the proem to The Secret Doctrine, and you will understand the secret of the influence of that extraordinary woman on her contemporaries." He was also very much Russell, that is, was very much an admirer of W.Q. Judge, who he met. And Judge obviously had quite an effect on him. Of his view of W.Q. Judge, he wrote to his friend Carrie Rhea, "I've sent you today a book which I hope you will like, Letters That Have Helped Me. They are written by a man whom I consider the wisest and sweetest of any I have ever met, W.Q. Judge. I have more reverence for him than for any other human being I know of. I hope they will mean as much to you as to many of us. They are not badly written, but do not think of fine or beautiful phrases when reading them, but only of the things it is good to live with and ever to keep in mind." I think he says only things he knows. So Russell was a prolific writer on many subjects, but probably his most famous book is The Candle of Vision. It is written in his highly poetic style and deals with clairvoyant vision, mystical meditation, and his encounters with the hidden side of nature. Nowadays, the book is readily available online for free and is well worth a read. It is one of my favourite books. I think I first read it in the 1970s, and it had very much of an effect on me and even the style of writing that I do. I do like that kind of poetic way of writing. It's mainly lost today. Another of his works was the Song and Its Fountains, which is probably my favourite actually, because I like it. It's about poetry and song, etc. As it says. In this, Russell wrote, "Looking back on the past, I have a vivid sense of a being seeking reincarnation here, beginning with those faint first intuitions of beauty and those early dreamings which were its forerunners. It was no angelic thing, pure and new from a foundry of souls which sought embodiment, but a being stained with the dust and conflict of a long travel through time, carrying with it unsated desires, base and august, and as I divined it, myriads of perceptions and a secret wisdom. It was not simple, but infinitely complex, as a being must be, which has been in many worlds, and all it had experienced has become part of it. If there was an original purity of being, it had become corrupted, yet not altogether, for there was in it, I believe, some incorruptible spiritual atom, carrying with it maybe some perception of its journeyings with deity. It had worshipped in many houses of prayer, and kept the reverence it had paid, and had been in many a gay and many a ruined heart. Out of ancient happiness, it could build intoxicating images of life, and out of ancient sorrows it could evoke a desolating wisdom that would crucify the infant joy ere it could run to its light." Amazing. An amazing way of expressing things. I don't think many writers have been able to express their feelings and experiences in such a beautiful and meaningful way. It truly captures the poetry of the Celtic spirit and the depths of inspirational language that is in many ways lost in this modern world. The 1975 biography by Henry Summerfield is titled The Myriad-Minded Man, and is a very accurate description of Russell, as his talent seemed to be never-ending. He was definitely myriad-minded. It is strange, then, that he seems to be almost forgotten in theosophical circles, when his contribution in the early days was so prolific and far-reaching. However, there's recently been a revival of interest in Russell's work in Ireland, and his contribution to Irish culture is again being recognised. As a theosophist, he produced some of the most inspiring and uplifting work in the movement's history. This is in the field of poetry, painting, writing, and lecturing, as well as the example of the man himself, who had such a positive influence on all who were fortunate enough to meet him. After the death of H.P. Blavatsky and William Quan Judge in 1891, and 1896 respectively, he left the Theosophical Society and formed the Hermetic Society. And someone who was with him in that was P.G. Bowen. And that's a picture of P.G. Bowen. And P.G. Bowen wrote of him, "Before all else, A.E. was a theosophist. With crystal sincerity and childlike simplicity, which at all times distinguished him, he revealed to me that his aim in life, overriding all else, was to bring knowledge of the world of spirit, where all hearts and minds are one, into the clouded sphere of human thought. He sought to bring it to Ireland, his own country, first and foremost, not because he ever forgot the equal needs of the rest of the world, but because he held rightly, as every true theosophist will agree, that we should cultivate the field which lies nearest to hand, with the tool which stands most convenient. His literary pursuits were not followed as a way leading to gain and fame, things to which he was supremely indifferent, but because they furnished a ready channel created by the instrument built up by many lives, his personal selfhood, through which might flow something of the rhythms of the one life, and with their touch restored to some sort of tune the jangled strings of human consciousness." I always find that amazing. Restored to some sort of tune the jangled strings of human consciousness. I remember the story of the Buddha. In modern times, it's related to a guitar. Maybe it was a Vina or something in those days. But if the strings are too slack, the guitar is out of tune. If the strings are too tight, it's out of tune. They need to be just right. It's like the middle way. So to restore some sort of tune from the jangled strings of human consciousness, there must be some kind of harmony within. And those are very beautiful words. Again. After his wife died in 1932, Russell moved to London. In 1935, he toured the USA lecturing on rural politics. In February, he became ill and had to sail home in March. After an abdominal operation, it became obvious that he had a terminal illness, and he died on July 17th in a nursing home in Bournemouth. He was taken back to Dublin, where his body lay in state in Plunkett House in Merrion Square, where he had worked for many years for the Irish Agricultural Organisational Society. The final word is by US Vice President Henry Wallace, who was Vice President from 1941 to 45. And he sums it all up by saying, A.E. was a prophet out of an ancient age. He was one of the finest, most gifted, and most colourful people I ever knew. Never anything but the utmost humility, simplicity, sweetness, and light. May God grant the Irish may be able to produce such a man again. And have they? Who knows? The book that I have in my possession is this one, The Descent of the Gods, and it's translated by Ragavan Iyer and his wife. It's got a very excellent introduction to it, and really all of these spiritual writings, the Song at its Fountains, Candle of Vision, many of his stories, poems, and articles. It's an amazing book. It's over 600 pages long. It's a very, very great work of art by Ragavan Iyer getting it all together. So I'd recommend that if you can get hold of it. It's not very cheap, but it's worth getting. So there you are. I'll move away very quick because this camera isn't very good, and it's out of sync as well. So I'll just say Om Shanti, 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 peace, 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 peace on earth and goodwill to all beings, and see you all very soon.